So about a year ago, I did a video on dissociative identity disorder in our current climate when we were watching people like Cardi B come on screen and say one thing, and then 3 months later she's saying the exact opposite, and everybody kind of just goes along with it and doesn't question it. Same thing with presidents, same things with people just in the public eye, period. Dissociative identity disorder is a mechanism that the brain does in order to keep us safe. So when we go through trauma as a child, if we go through something that the child cannot process in the moment, it's too much for the child to go through, then our subconscious and our brain sort of breaks off into another part. There's a part of you that kind of goes behind an amnesic wall and disassociates from whatever your current reality is. So if you're in an abusive household and you're getting abused, you're going to disassociate and leave your body because that's just what the brain does in order to function. So later on in life, you may not remember that that's what happened to you. This can happen on a grand scale of major abuse. And so when people are incredibly disassociated, they constantly kind of switch channels and they're sort of checked out, and they don't, they lose a lot of time. They don't have good memory recall. They might say one thing and the next thing say something completely different and not have any recollection of what they said. They're just switching channels quite a lot. And on a smaller scale, disassociating can look like, let's say you're driving a car and like you're just like, oh man, like today was so crazy, and you just start thinking about stuff and school and your kids or work or your husband or a fight you got into or an argument, whatever. And then 5 minutes goes by and you don't really remember driving the car because you've disassociated, you've kind of gone to another place, but you're still at the wheel driving. So that's like a more milder version of what disassociating can look like. In today's climate, there's a lot of this that we're seeing on the world stage right now in our current reality of pop culture and everything that's happening. And I want you to think about this very critically, if you can. Like, apply it to scenarios that you're seeing in the public eye right now. When someone disassociates and they are playing a role, it's because they were trained to do so. So people on a very high scale of disassociation who have been through MK Ultra programs, they have been abused since they were a very small child, and they've been trained to play a certain role. So they've been trained to could be an assassin, could be a president, could be a musician, could be an actor, could be a honeypot, which is a woman that is kind of a sex kitten and is meant to seduce a certain political figure or someone in charge of a political movement, or just someone in general that's powerful or plays a certain role so that an agenda is swung in a certain direction or a certain outcome is given. They're just used as a tool, basically. They're just used as a sex kitten. And so they are trained from a very young age to play this role. These children are chosen based on their ability to disassociate. So whether or not the child is able to leave their body, whether or not the child is able to lack a certain amount of empathy, whether or not they're physically fit, whether or not they're physically attractive. Whatever role they're going to play, they are sought after as a child. Like, they go through different training programs and exercises to see how they react in certain situations, and that's how they are chosen for each role, growing up into an adult, going into whatever it is that they're supposed to do for the group of quote-unquote powerful people that control them. So when they are an adult and they're in their mission and they're in their controlled situation, they are doing whatever this group is telling them to do. Whatever the role is, the person that you're seeing in an everyday scenario, could have a normal life, seemingly to everybody else, and you would never know that this person is MK Ultra. You would never know that they have like a double life, that they're basically like a double agent. And they don't know it either because they're disassociated. So they will go to certain places at certain times to get trained to do certain things. They have handlers, and they do horrific abuse tactics, near-death experiences, all kinds of heinous things you don't even want to know about and you couldn't possibly fathom to imagine, in order to train children growing up to be adults to do certain jobs. So when someone comes to the forefront and is in a program and they're in a mask, so to speak, they are going to present whatever it is that the programmer wants them to present. They are going to play whatever role that is serving the government, or they are going to say whatever narrative they need to say in order to serve the government, or whatever the group of powerful people that have a hold on this individual in order to steer certain narratives. This person, it might be a quote unquote nice person, and could even be a Christian in everyday life, goes to church, lives like a church-like life. Maybe it's not a Christian, maybe they're just a normal business person, or like I said, it could be a celebrity, could be a politician, could be a musician, could be someone that isn't in the public eye, but they could be a very nice person in their everyday life, but on their double life, they're doing horrible things. They're learning how to have no empathy in some cases, or shoot to kill, just do horrible things. They're basically taught to disassociate and have another part of them take over in order to get a job done. So they are sent out on these missions in order to destroy lives, basically, to destroy someone's life for gain of power or greed or money, or to steer a narrative. So when we start to see people in the public eye all of a sudden showing one face, and they're like, blah, 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 this is da, 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 da. And then all of a sudden they switch channels and they start preaching a whole different thing, like it's the opposite of what they were saying before. And then they go to another channel, or they go back to the first channel they were on, and they start acting a certain way. And then they go back to channel B, and they're preaching whatever it is they're preaching. And I'm just saying this because I'm not trying to call out anyone specific, but think about this formula and everything that's going on in today's world, in the current climate of the melodramas that we have going on in our world right now that are important. And when these people are doing this, they have no idea that they're doing this. They're very disconnected from their body. They're very disassociated. They are being told what to do. They are being paid to do it. But they're also being very abused. Like, these are very abused people. So it's very sad, actually. It's very sad, actually, when you start to spot this kind of behavior and you see it on the world stage, or you see it kind of play out in pop culture and in the world arena, because you know that they've lived a horrible life and then they've grown up to cast their pain onto other people in order to control them or steer a narrative. And they are capable of the most evil you could possibly imagine, because they have been programmed to have no empathy. They've been programmed to steer a certain narrative, and they have handlers that tell them exactly what to do all the time and program them to do it, and they are on a mission. There are certain things that people who are in these programs, there are certain indicators based on their upbringing, who their parents are, what kind of work their parents did, just what kind of bloodline they came from, and just the role that they play. There's a certain energy behind it. But when you see someone shifting from one role to the other and to the other and to the other, and they're not really making much sense. Like they're living a very fragmented reality, and they haven't integrated themselves. Like they're literally just playing a role so that they steer a certain narrative. So when you see someone starting to shift and sort of play one role and then the other role, you have to start asking yourself questions like, is this person getting paid to do this? Is this person, a lot of times we're going to see this kind of thing on mainstream media. Mainstream media is notorious for pushing these kind of personality types out. There's like a scripted program that they're supposed to use. They can't go off script. Everything's very fake and scripted and not authentic in any kind of way. It always feels kind of, it feels off, it feels fake, it feels very scripted. Another way that you can tell if someone is not MK Ultra and not part of a government program is if they're constantly getting attacked. If they are constantly going against the mainstream narrative, if they are constantly stirring the pot, if they are constantly putting their nose where it's not wanted, if they are constantly shining light in places that make other people uncomfortable, if they are doing things that are going against the grain, period. They're not following the beat of the drum that everyone else is. They're a black sheep. They're out there just kind of doing their own thing. Because when people are bought and paid for, there's a very scripted narrative. It's not very far off from everything else that you see out there, and we've seen it a million times. So when you're looking at our reality right now and the climate and everything that's going on, think about this formula and think about the people that you're watching and how they're acting and whether or not they might be in a disassociated state. Are they all of a sudden acting like the complete opposite of what they said like a couple weeks ago or a couple months ago? And they're playing like a different note and it doesn't quite make sense and it's just a little bit off. And then they might go back to their channel A. There's different, it's an energy and you either spot it or you don't. Like if you study this kind of stuff, you can catch it from, like a long ways away. But there's a lot of that happening in today's climate. I really pray that people start to wake up to these kinds of realities and understand that what we're seeing is a very dark agenda coming into fruition, and they're using people who have been abused since they were very small and very young age to play a certain role and do exactly what they're doing in order to gain power, money, and play a certain role in our society. So just think about this formula and apply it to our current reality and see if you can figure out who is who.